Sarah Matthews gripped the steering wheel as her phone buzzed for the 5th time. Another message from Daniel. She glanced down, just for a second. The truck appeared out of nowhere. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. The world spun, then went black. When Sarah opened her eyes, the hospital ceiling greeted her. Stark white tiles and fluorescent lights that hurt to look at. A constant beeping from machines confirmed she was alive, though nothing felt right. Her body seemed distant, disconnected. "You're awake." A nurse with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair approached. "I'll get the doctor." Sarah tried to sit up, but couldn't feel her legs moving. Panic rose in her throat. "My legs," she whispered. "I can't feel my legs." The nurse's expression softened with practiced sympathy. "The doctor will explain everything." Dr. Patel arrived minutes later, clipboard in hand, her face a careful mask of professional concern. "Ms. Matthews," she began, "you were in a serious accident 3 days ago. Your car was hit by a truck at an intersection." Sarah swallowed hard. "My legs?" Dr. Patel didn't sugarcoat it. "The impact damaged your spinal cord at the T10 vertebra. We performed emergency surgery, but..." She paused, meeting Sarah's eyes directly. "The injury has caused paralysis from your waist down." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah felt her breath catch. "Temporary?" she asked, though something in the doctor's expression had already answered her. "I'm afraid not. With physical therapy and rehabilitation, you'll learn to adapt, but the paralysis is permanent." Sarah stared at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into her hair. 29 years old, and in one moment, her entire future had changed course. "There's someone who's been waiting to see you," the nurse said gently. "Your fiancé." Daniel. Sarah had almost forgotten. For the first time since waking, she felt a flicker of comfort. Daniel would help her through this. He loved her. They were getting married in 4 months. When he walked in, Sarah reached for him, needing his warmth, his strength. But Daniel stopped short of the bed, his handsome face pale, eyes fixed not on her face, but on the still shape of her legs beneath the thin hospital blanket. "Hey," he said, his voice strained. He bent to kiss her forehead, a quick, almost formal gesture. "It's bad," Sarah said, not as a question. Daniel nodded, pulling up a chair but keeping a careful distance. "The doctors told me. They say I won't walk again." Daniel's gaze dropped to his hands. He wore the tailored suit she loved, the one from his marketing firm's big client presentation. Had he come straight from work? "We'll get through this," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. In the days that followed, Sarah noticed the pattern. Daniel's visits grew shorter, the gaps between them longer. When he did come, he brought flowers but avoided her eyes. He talked about work, the weather, TV shows, anything but their future. Her parents flew in from Arizona, staying at her apartment, bringing her clothes and toiletries. Her mother cried the first time she saw Sarah transferred to a wheelchair, but then dried her tears and got practical, talking to doctors about home modifications and therapy options. 2 weeks later, Sarah was discharged. Daniel had sent a text. "Sorry, can't make it today. Big meeting. Mum will help with the discharge." His mother, Eleanor, was polite but distant as she drove Sarah to the apartment she and Daniel had shared for the past year. The silence between them stretched uncomfortably. "Daniel's been working so hard," Eleanor finally said. "This promotion could mean everything for his career." Sarah nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "He's always been dedicated." Eleanor helped her into the apartment, where Sarah's mother had already arranged a makeshift bedroom in the living room. The sight of their bed, now inaccessible in the upstairs loft, was the final blow. That night, Sarah called Daniel. It went to voicemail. She texted, "Please come home tonight. We need to talk." He arrived after midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey. Sarah was still awake, propped up on the pull-out couch. "We can't keep avoiding this," she said. Daniel sat heavily in the armchair across from her. His face looked drawn, almost haunted in the dim light. "I don't know how to do this, Sarah," he finally said. "Do what? Be with me?" He ran a hand through his dark hair. "Everything's different now." "I'm still me," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I still love you." "But our plans?" Daniel gestured vaguely. "The hiking trips, the traveling, the house with stairs we were saving for. Kids, Sarah. We talked about having kids. We can still have all that. Different maybe, but can we?" He looked at her directly for the first time. "Will it ever be what we dreamed of?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "I need some time," Daniel said, standing, "to think." "Time away from me, you mean?" He didn't deny it. "I'll stay at Jason's for a while." Sarah watched him pack a bag, feeling as though she were witnessing the end of her world for the second time in 2 weeks. After he left, she didn't cry. Something cold and hard settled in her chest instead. The next morning, Sarah's physical therapist, Mia, arrived for their first home session. Young, muscular, with a shock of bright blue hair, Mia filled the apartment with an energy Sarah had almost forgotten existed. "So," Mia said, helping Sarah into her wheelchair, "let's start with the basics. Then we'll talk about how to flip off anyone who stares at you for too long." Despite herself, Sarah laughed. Over the next month, Sarah learned to navigate her new life. How to dress herself, how to cook from a seated position, how to transfer in and out of her chair. Her arms grew stronger, her hands calloused. Daniel called occasionally, visited twice. Each time, the distance between them grew. Then came the text that Sarah had been both expecting and dreading. "Can we meet in person? We need to talk." They met at a coffee shop near Sarah's physical therapy center. Daniel arrived late, looking both guilty and relieved, like someone about to confess a sin. "I can't do this," he said after they'd exchanged awkward greetings. "I've tried, Sarah. I've really tried to imagine our future, but I'm not what you signed up for," Sarah finished for him. Daniel had the grace to flinch. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" He twisted the engagement ring on his finger, the matching one to hers. "I care about you. I want what's best for you." "No," Sarah said quietly. "You want what's easy for you." Daniel placed a small box on the table between them. "I'll keep paying my half of the rent for 6 months, until you figure things out." Sarah stared at the box, knowing it contained her engagement ring. She'd left it at home, unable to bear the thought of him asking for it back. "I don't want your money," she said. "Please, Sarah, let me do this one thing." She looked at the man she'd planned to spend her life with and saw a stranger. "Was it ever real? What you felt for me?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, but love isn't always enough." After he left, Sarah sat alone, untouched coffee growing cold. Around her, life continued. People laughing, working on laptops, rushing in and out. A young couple at the next table fed each other bites of pastry, lost in each other's eyes. Sarah wheeled herself to the bathroom and locked the door. Then, and only then, did she allow herself to break down, muffling her sobs with a paper towel. When she emerged, her eyes were red but dry. She approached the counter and ordered a new coffee, this time to go. Outside, rain had started falling, light and cool against her face. Sarah lifted her chin and wheeled forward into the shower, letting it wash over her. An older woman passing by gave her a concerned look. "Oh, honey, you're getting all wet." Sarah smiled, a real smile that surprised even her. "Yes," she said. "I am." She had lost her fiancé. She had lost her legs. But as the rain soaked through her clothes, Sarah Matthews made a silent promise to herself. She would not lose her life. Not again. Not ever. 3 months after Daniel walked out of the coffee shop and her life, Sarah sat in her apartment staring at a letter. The San Francisco Art Institute logo gleamed in the corner. Her dream job offer from before the accident. Once, She would have danced around the room. Now, she just felt hollow. "They want me back," she told her mother over the phone, "as a consultant for their new accessibility program." "That's wonderful, honey." Her mother's voice brightened. "When do you start?" Sarah ran her finger along the edge of the paper. "I haven't decided if I'm going." The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably. "Sarah, it's been months. You need to..." "Need to what, Mom? Move on. Pretend everything's fine." Sarah's voice cracked. "I can't even get into the building without help." Another silence. "I'm just worried about you." After they hung up, Sarah wheeled to the window. The city sprawled before her, all steep hills and narrow sidewalks. Once, she'd loved this view. Now it looked like a maze designed to keep her trapped. Her phone pinged with a text from Mia, her physical therapist. "Dinner tonight? Brought back Japanese treats from visiting my sister." Sarah hesitated, then typed, "Not feeling great. Rain check?" Mia's response came quickly. "Nope. I'm already outside your building. Buzz me in." Before Sarah could argue, the intercom buzzed. She sighed and pressed the button. Minutes later, Mia bounded in with a bag of food and an energy that made the apartment feel suddenly smaller. "You need to stop avoiding everyone," Mia said, unpacking containers onto the coffee table. "Even Jason's asking about you." Jason, Daniel's best friend, the one who'd called last month to awkwardly check in, clearly fulfilling an obligation. "I'm not avoiding everyone," Sarah lied. "I've been busy." Mia raised an eyebrow. "Busy watching reruns and ignoring opportunities?" She gestured to the letter still sitting on the side table. Sarah flushed. "You read my mail?" It was sitting out, and the SFI logo isn't exactly subtle. Mia handed her a container of gyoza. "So, are you taking it?" Sarah poked at the dumplings. "I don't know if I can handle it." "Handle what? Being around art? Or being around people who knew you before?" The question hit too close. Sarah had avoided her old friends, her old workplace. She couldn't bear the looks, the pity mixed with relief that it hadn't happened to them. "Both, I guess." Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, looking up at Sarah. "You know what the hardest part of recovery is? It's not the physical stuff. It's believing you're still worth something." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Easy for you to say." "Is it?" Mia pulled up her pant leg, revealing a long, jagged scar running from ankle to knee. "Motorcycle accident, 6 years ago. Almost lost the leg. 2 years of surgeries and PT. My boyfriend at the time couldn't handle the disruption to our lifestyle." Sarah stared. In 6 months of therapy, Mia had never mentioned this. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mia shrugged. "Because I'm your therapist, not your tragedy buddy. But also because I didn't want you to think I was comparing our situations." She lowered her pant leg. "Everyone's journey is different, but I do know what it's like when people you love can't handle who you've become." They ate in silence for a while, the city lights twinkling beyond the window. "The Art Institute job," Mia finally said. "What would you be doing?" Sarah toyed with her chopsticks. "Developing programs for artists with disabilities, making the institute more accessible." "Sounds perfect for you." "Or a constant reminder of what I've lost." Mia leaned forward. "Maybe it's both. And maybe that's okay." After Mia left, Sarah couldn't sleep. She found herself scrolling through old photos on her phone, pictures from gallery openings, hiking trips with Daniel, her graduation from art school, a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She paused on a picture taken a week before the accident. She and Daniel stood on a beach, wind whipping their hair, his arm around her waist. They looked happy, in love. Had it been real, or had their relationship always been built on the assumption of an untroubled future? Sarah put the phone down and wheeled to her makeshift art corner, a small desk by the window that she rarely used anymore. Her sketchbooks gathered dust. her charcoals remained untouched. On impulse, she pulled out a blank pad and a pencil. She began to draw, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Not the careful, technical drawings she'd been known for at the Institute, but raw, emotional lines that seemed to pour directly from her chest onto the paper. By morning, she'd filled 12 pages. Most were dark, angry scribbles. But the final page showed something different. A woman in a wheelchair, facing away, looking out at a vast landscape. Small, but not diminished. Sarah stared at the drawing, surprised by what her hands had created. Then she reached for her phone and called the number on the Art Institute letter. "This is Sarah Matthews," she said when the director's assistant answered. "About the consulting position, I'd like to come in for a meeting." 2 days later, Sarah found herself outside the Institute's imposing entrance. The building's grand stone steps, once a feature she'd admired, now looked like a fortress wall. She'd researched the accessibility entrance, but still felt a flush of shame as she made her way around to the side of the building. A security guard directed her to a service elevator that smelled faintly of cleaning products. The director, Marcus Chen, greeted her warmly when she finally reached his office. "Sarah, it's wonderful to see you." They'd worked together for 3 years before the accident. Now he looked at her with a mixture of professional interest and carefully contained sympathy. "Thanks for meeting with me," Sarah said, wheeling into the spot he'd cleared by his desk. "I appreciate the opportunity." "We miss your eye for new talent," Marcus said, "and we've been wanting to improve our accessibility for years. Your perspective would be invaluable." "Your tragedy," Sarah translated silently. "Your misfortune is our diversity initiative." "Tell me about the program," she said instead. For the next hour, they discussed the Institute's plans, more accessible exhibitions, scholarships for artists with disabilities, community outreach. "What do you think?" Marcus asked finally. "Could you see yourself being part of this?" Sarah looked around the office, at the art books lining the walls, the exhibition calendar, the framed photos of gallery openings. This world had once been her everything. "I'd like to," she admitted, "but I need to be honest. I haven't created anything in months. I'm not sure I'm the right person anymore." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "The day after your accident, do you know what happened here?" Sarah shook her head. 3 different artists called to ask about your condition, not your job, you. They said you were the only curator who truly saw their work. He smiled slightly. "You have a gift, Sarah. That didn't change when you ended up in that chair." On her way out, Sarah took a detour through the main gallery. A new exhibition was being installed. Large abstract paintings in vibrant colors. The space felt familiar yet strange, like returning to a childhood home. A young woman on a ladder looked down and waved. "Ms. Matthews, I'm Layla. I interned under you last year." Sarah smiled, surprised to be recognized. "How's it going, Layla?" "Great. I'm an assistant curator now." Layla climbed down and approached. "Are you coming back to work?" The question was asked without pity or discomfort, just genuine interest. It caught Sarah off guard. "Maybe, in a different role." Layla nodded. "We could use your expertise. The new director is, well, let's just say his taste runs commercial." They chatted about the Institute, the upcoming exhibitions. For a few minutes, Sarah felt like her old self, engaged, knowledgeable. When she finally headed toward the elevator, Layla called after her. "Ms. Matthews, that sketch series you did for the student showcase last year, it changed how I look at negative space. Just wanted you to know." The words followed Sarah all the way home, settling in her chest like a small, warm coal. That night, she pulled out her sketchbook again and began to draw. This time, she didn't stop at angry scribbles. She drew the Institute, reimagined with ramps instead of stairs. She drew the gallery space from a seated perspective, with paintings hung at various heights. She drew herself, seated before a canvas, brush in hand. When she finally put down her pencil, it was past midnight. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from her mother and a text from Mia. How did it go? Sarah sent a simple reply. I took the job. Then she wheeled to her closet and began pulling out art supplies, brushes, paints, canvases. She hadn't touched them since before the accident. Some part of her had believed that if she couldn't stand at an easel, she couldn't create. Now, she arranged them on her lowered desk, positioning everything within reach. It wouldn't be the same. Nothing would ever be the same. But as she uncapped a tube of cadmium red, her favorite color, Sarah realized something. Different didn't have to mean destroyed. There might be a life waiting for her after all. Not the one she'd planned, but perhaps one she could learn to embrace. She began to paint, and for the first time in months, the silence in her apartment didn't feel like an accusation. It felt like possibility. Hold that pose for just a moment longer, Sarah called across the studio, sketchbook balanced on her lap. The light is perfect. The model, a young woman with an above-knee amputation, adjusted her prosthetic leg slightly and smiled. Take your time. I can do this all day. It had been 8 months since Sarah accepted the position at the San Francisco Art Institute. What began as a consulting role had evolved into something more significant. She now directed the Institute's first adaptive arts program, a series of workshops and exhibitions featuring artists with disabilities. Today's life drawing class was part of that program. Artists of all abilities capturing the beauty of bodies that society often labeled as different. Sarah finished her sketch and nodded to the model. That's perfect, Amber. Thank you. As the class wrapped up, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Committee approved your exhibition proposal. Redefined opens in February. Congratulations. Sarah stared at the screen, stunned. Her own exhibition, featuring her work alongside other disabled artists, had seemed like an impossible dream just months ago. Good news? Asked Amber, pulling on a sweater. I got my exhibition, Sarah said, still processing. My first since... Amber squeezed her shoulder. That's huge. We should celebrate. I don't know, Sarah hesitated. There's still so much work to do before February. All the more reason to take a night off, Amber insisted. A bunch of us are meeting at the Oasis tonight. You should come. The Oasis was an accessible bar that had become a gathering place for the disability community. Sarah had heard about it, but never visited. Maybe next time, she said automatically. Despite her professional progress, Sarah's social life remained carefully controlled. She saw her mother weekly, met with Mia for occasional dinners, and connected with colleagues at work. Beyond that, she kept to herself. Amber wasn't easily deterred. You've been saying next time for months. Come on, just for an hour. My friend Ryan is DJing. He's pretty amazing. Before Sarah could formulate another excuse, her phone buzzed again. A message from Mia. Heard about the exhibition. No excuses. We're celebrating. Picking you up at 8. Sarah laughed, despite herself. Seems like I don't have a choice. That evening, as Mia helped her get ready, Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. What if it's too crowded? What if the bathroom isn't truly accessible? Mia applied lipstick with expert precision. Then we'll leave, but you won't know unless you try. Sarah studied her reflection. She'd dressed carefully in dark jeans and a deep blue top that brought out her eyes. Her brown hair, once long, now fell in a stylish bob that framed her face. She looked good. Different from the woman in old photos with Daniel, but good. Ready? Mia asked, grabbing her jacket. Sarah took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. The Oasis was packed when they arrived, but the crowd parted easily to allow Sarah's wheelchair through. The space was thoughtfully designed. No steps, wide pathways, lowered bar sections. For once, Sarah didn't feel like an inconvenience. Amber waved from a corner table where several people sat laughing over drinks. You came, she exclaimed, hugging Sarah. Everyone, this is Sarah, the artistic genius I told you about. Sarah flushed as Amber introduced her friends, a mix of people with various disabilities and allies from the community. There was Kevin, a blind musician, Maria, a dancer with cerebral palsy, and others whose names blurred together in Sarah's nervous mind. And that's Ryan. Amber pointed to the DJ booth, where a man in a wheelchair was expertly mixing tracks. He lost his legs in Afghanistan. Now, he's the best DJ in the Bay Area. As if sensing her gaze, Ryan looked up and nodded in Sarah's direction. She nodded back, feeling suddenly self-conscious. The evening progressed more easily than Sarah had expected. She found herself laughing at Kevin's dry humor, admiring Maria's passionate description of her dance company, and slowly letting her guard down. "So you're the famous Sarah Matthews," a voice said beside her. She turned to find Ryan, who had wheeled over during a break in his set. Up close, he was even more striking. Dark hair, keen eyes that seemed to take in everything, and an easy confidence that Sarah envied. "Famous is a stretch," she replied. "Not according to Amber. She says your program at SFAI is changing lives." Sarah shrugged. "I'm just trying to open doors that should have been open all along." Ryan studied her with unexpected intensity. "I checked out your work online. Your recent pieces, they're raw, honest." Something in his voice made Sarah look up. There was no pity in his expression, just genuine appreciation. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Art it's how I'm finding my way back to myself." They talked for the next hour, about art, music, the city. Ryan had been a DJ before his military service and returned to it during recovery. The rhythm was still there, he explained. Everything else changed, but not that. As the night wound down, Ryan hesitated, then said, "There's an accessible trail in Marin County. Great views of the bay. A few of us go every Sunday. You should join us." Sarah felt her instinctive refusal forming. Outdoor activities reminded her too much of her life before. Hiking with Daniel, running on the beach. "I don't know," she began. "Just think about it," Ryan said, handing her his card. "No pressure." Later, in the Uber home, Mia nudged her. "He's cute." Sarah rolled her eyes. "We just met." "I'm just saying. It's been almost a year since Daniel." Sarah looked out the window at the passing city lights. "I'm not ready." For Ryan specifically, or for anyone? For the whole process, the explaining, the awkward questions about... She gestured at her chair. Mia's expression softened. "Fair enough, but don't dismiss the possibility forever." The next morning, Sarah woke early and found herself staring at Ryan's card on her nightstand. On impulse, she texted the number. "It's Sarah from last night. Tell me more about this trail." 3 days later, Sarah found herself at the trailhead, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. She'd almost cancelled twice. Ryan waved from where he waited with Amber and 2 others, an older man named George who used a prosthetic leg, and his wife, Lynn. "You made it," Ryan smiled, looking genuinely pleased. The trail was indeed accessible, well-maintained with a gradual incline that challenged Sarah's arms but didn't defeat her. They moved at an easy pace, stopping to admire views of the bay sparkling in the distance. "I haven't done anything like this since before," Sarah admitted as they paused at a lookout point. "Before what?" asked George. "Your injury?" Sarah nodded. "We all have a before," George said matter-of-factly. "Mine was 30 years ago. Lost my leg in a construction accident. Thought my life was over." Lynn squeezed his hand. "Tell her what you did after." George grinned. "Climbed Half Dome. Took me 2 years of training, but I did it." As they continued along the trail, Sarah felt something shift inside her, a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. Whether it was the fresh air, the company, or simply being in motion, she felt alive. When they reached the summit, the view took her breath away. Mountains rising in the distance, the city sprawled below, the vast expanse of water and sky. Worth the climb? Ryan asked, wheeling up beside her. Sarah nodded, emotion catching in her throat. That night, back in her apartment, Sarah pulled out her paints and began working on a new piece for her exhibition. Instead of the dark, angular shapes that had dominated her recent work, this canvas exploded with color, blues and golds capturing the view from the summit. She worked until dawn, lost in the creative flow she'd once feared was gone forever. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm to Sarah's life. Weekdays at the Institute, weekends often spent with her new friends. She joined Ryan and the others for more trails, for accessible kayaking on the bay, for concerts and dinners. Ryan became a steady presence, a friend who understood her world without needing explanations. He didn't ask about her accident or flinch when tasks took her longer. He simply existed alongside her, offering help when needed, but never assuming incapability. One evening, as they shared takeout in her apartment after a film festival, Ryan asked about her upcoming exhibition. "It's called Redefined," Sarah explained, showing him the catalog mock-ups. "Each artist explores how disability has forced them to redefine everything: their art, their identity, their place in the world." Ryan nodded, studying the images. "And this is your centerpiece?" He pointed to a large canvas Sarah had been working on for weeks, a figure emerging from fractured darkness into light, neither standing nor seated, but somehow transcending both states. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "It's called Becoming." "It's powerful," Ryan said quietly. "You can feel the transformation." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Sarah looked away first, her heart racing. "The Institute wants to make this a major event," she said, changing the subject. "They're inviting critics, collectors, other artists." "They should," Ryan agreed. "This work deserves to be seen." As he left that night, Ryan paused at the door. "Sarah," he began, then stopped. "You're creating something important. I'm glad I get to witness it." After he'd gone, Sarah sat in the silence of her apartment, feeling the echo of his words. For so long, she'd defined herself by what she'd lost: mobility, Daniel, her former life. Now, surrounded by half-finished canvases and exhibition plans, she was defining herself by what she was creating. 2 weeks before the exhibition opening, Sarah received an email that made her blood run cold. The message was from Eleanor, Daniel's mother. "Sarah, I hope this finds you well. Daniel mentioned your upcoming exhibition. He's back in San Francisco now, working for a new firm. I think he'd like to come to your opening. Would that be acceptable?" Warmly, Eleanor Sarah stared at the screen, her throat tight. Daniel, back in the city, wanting to see her exhibition. She hadn't spoken to him since that day in the coffee shop nearly a year ago. She'd heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to Los Angeles for a new job. She'd imagined him long gone from her life. Sarah's finger hovered over the delete button. Then, slowly, she moved to reply. "Eleanor, thank you for reaching out. The exhibition is open to the public. Daniel is welcome to attend if he wishes. Best, Sarah." She pressed send before she could reconsider, then sat back, heart pounding. After everything, after abandoning her when she needed him most, why would Daniel want to see her now? And why, despite everything, did the thought of seeing him again make her chest ache with a confusion of anger, grief, and something else she couldn't name? That night, unable to sleep, Sarah wheeled out onto her small balcony and looked up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. She thought of the mountain trail, of the vast sky above the bay, of the freedom she'd felt there. She thought of Ryan's steady presence beside her, and of Daniel's absence this past year. As dawn broke over the city, Sarah made a decision. She would not hide from her past. She would face it, face him, with the strength she'd fought so hard to build. She was not the same woman Daniel had left behind, and it was time he saw exactly who she had become. Sarah stood in the center of the gallery, surrounded by the culmination of a year's transformation. The exhibition space buzzed with final preparations, technicians adjusting lighting, assistants arranging printed catalogs, Marcus conferring with the caterers about the opening reception. 2 hours until doors open, Marcus reminded her, checking his watch. Any last adjustments? Sarah surveyed the room. 24 artists with various disabilities had contributed work, but her pieces formed the emotional core of the exhibition. Her journey from darkness to light traced the walls, beginning with the raw, angry sketches from her early recovery and culminating with Becoming, the large canvas that now commanded the far wall. "It's perfect," she said, surprised to find she meant it. "Everything is exactly where it should be." Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "This is going to be a landmark event for the Institute. The press coverage alone is secondary," Sarah finished firmly. "What matters is that people see these artists for their vision, not just their disabilities." "Of course," Marcus nodded, chastened. "Speaking of which, the accessibility team did a final walkthrough this morning. All modifications are complete." Sarah smiled. The preparations had been extensive, ensuring adequate space between displays for wheelchair users, adding tactile elements for visually impaired visitors, providing audio descriptions of each work. The exhibition would be the Institute's most accessible ever. "I should get home to change," she said, glancing at the time. "I'll be back before the preview starts." As she wheeled toward the exit, her phone chimed with a text from Ryan. "Good luck tonight. I'll be there early to help however you need." The message brought a smile to her face. Over the past weeks, their friendship had deepened into something more, though neither had put it into words. Ryan understood her in ways others couldn't. The daily challenges, the moments of unexpected grief, but also the hard-won joys of rebuilding a life. In her apartment, Sarah dressed carefully in a sleek black dress and silver jewelry. She applied makeup with a steady hand, noting how her face had changed. Thinner, yes, but also stronger somehow, more defined. Her eyes held a confidence that had been absent for so long. As she put the finishing touches on her appearance, another text arrived, this one from Mia. "Your parents just landed, picking them up now. See you at 6. Sarah took a deep breath. Her parents had flown in from Arizona for the opening, their first visit since her initial recovery. They'd seen photos of her work, but not the pieces themselves. Their approval still mattered more than she cared to admit. Just as she was about to leave, a final message appeared. "I'll be at the opening tonight. I'm proud of you." Daniel Sarah stared at the screen, her heart racing. Despite knowing he might attend, seeing his name sent a jolt through her system. She hadn't spoken to him in over a year. What would it be like to see him again? Would she still feel the ache of betrayal? Or worse, would she still feel something for him? She pushed the thoughts aside. Tonight wasn't about Daniel. It was about her work, her journey, her triumph. The gallery was transformed when Sarah returned. Soft lighting illuminated the artwork. Music played at a carefully calibrated volume, and the first VIP guests were already arriving. Critics, collectors, and supporters of the Institute. Ryan waited near the entrance, handsome in a charcoal suit. His face brightened when he saw her. "You look incredible," he said, wheeling alongside her as she entered. "So do you," she replied, suddenly shy. "Thank you for being here. Wouldn't miss it for anything." Together, they made a circuit of the space, greeting early arrivals and making final checks. When Sarah's parents appeared with Mia, emotion welled in her throat. Her father, stoic as ever, bent to hug her with tears in his eyes. "My brilliant girl," he whispered. Her mother couldn't speak at first, just held Sarah's hands and looked from her daughter to the artwork adorning the walls. "You did this," she finally managed. "All of this beauty from such pain." "Not just pain, Mom," Sarah corrected gently. "From life. My life." By 7 o'clock, the gallery was filled to capacity. Artists mingled with patrons, Reporters interviewed Marcus about the Institute's new focus on accessibility, and Sarah found herself surrounded by well-wishers. She introduced Ryan to colleagues and friends, warmed by the easy way he fit into her world. Then, through a break in the crowd, she saw him. Daniel stood near the entrance, more tentative than she remembered him. His dark hair was shorter now, his face a little leaner. He wore an expensive suit, new, she guessed, and carried a small gift bag. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, time seemed suspended, memories flooding back of their life together, their plans, their love, and then the ending that had nearly broken her. Ryan followed her gaze. "Is that—" "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "My ex-fiancée." Understanding dawned in Ryan's eyes. "Do you want me to stay or give you space?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Space, please, just for a few minutes." Ryan nodded, squeezing her hand before wheeling away to chat with Amber and the other artists. Sarah made her way toward Daniel, past guests admiring her work, past the life she'd built without him. When she reached him, she was surprised to find her hands steady, her breathing calm. "You came," she said simply. Daniel shifted, uncomfortable under her steady gaze. "I had to see for myself. Your work. It's extraordinary, Sarah." "Thank you." He gestured to the exhibition. "All of this, what you've created, what you've overcome, it's incredible." "It wasn't easy," she said, surprised by the neutrality in her voice. "No anger, no bitterness, just fact." "I know." He looked down, then held out the gift bag. "I brought you something. For tonight." Sarah hesitated, then accepted it. Inside was a small, carved wooden box. She recognized it immediately. They'd found it at a street market in Mexico during their first vacation together. She'd admired it, but they'd been saving money for their wedding. Daniel had pulled her away. "You went back for it?" she asked, confused. Daniel nodded. "The day after. I was going to give it to you as a surprise." He swallowed hard. "Then everything happened, and I kept it. I don't know why." Sarah ran her fingers over the intricate pattern carved into the wood. Once, this gesture would have moved her, perhaps even rekindled something. Now, it felt like an artifact from someone else's story. "Thank you," she said, closing the box. "It's thoughtful." An awkward silence fell between them. "I made a mistake, Sarah," Daniel finally said, his voice low, "walking away when you needed me most. It was the worst thing I've ever done." Sarah studied him. The man she'd once planned to marry looked smaller somehow, diminished by his own choices. "Yes," she agreed. "It was." He reached for her hand, but she kept it on her lap. "I've changed. I've had time to think about what really matters. Maybe we could—" "No," Sarah interrupted, gently but firmly. "We can't." Daniel's face fell. "You don't even want to try? After everything we were to each other?" Sarah looked past him to where Ryan waited, giving her space but watching protectively. Beyond him, her parents stood proudly near her centerpiece painting. Mia laughed with a group of artists from the program. This was her world now, hard-won, authentic, and completely hers. "What we were to each other was based on a version of me that doesn't exist anymore," she said carefully. "And honestly, Daniel, I like who I am now more than who I was then." "Because of the accident?" he asked, incredulous. "No, because of what came after." She gestured to the exhibition around them. "Because I had to rebuild myself from the ground up, and this time I did it on my terms." Daniel's expression shifted from hope to realization. "There's someone else." It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. "Yes, but that's not why. Even if there wasn't, we couldn't go back." A critic approached, eager to speak with the exhibition's featured artist. Sarah raised a hand, asking for one more moment. "I forgive you, Daniel," she said quietly. "Not for you, For me, so I can let it go completely." His eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that." "Probably not," she agreed. "But forgiveness isn't about what people deserve. It's about refusing to carry the weight of anger anymore." Daniel nodded slowly. "Your work is beautiful, Sarah. You always were the strongest one between us." He turned to leave, then paused. "I hope he knows how lucky he is." Sarah watched him walk away, feeling not the closure she'd expected, but something quieter, a final page turning, a chapter ending, not in heartbreak, but in peace. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and conversations. Critics praised the exhibition's honesty and innovation. Collectors purchased several pieces, including 2 of Sarah's smaller works. Marcus announced increased funding for the adaptive arts program. Near midnight, as the last guests departed, Sarah found herself alone with Ryan in the quiet gallery. They wheeled slowly through the space, looking at the artwork in the dimmed lighting. "What are you thinking?" Ryan asked, stopping beside her, becoming painting. Sarah considered the question. "I'm thinking about journeys, how you never end up where you expected." "Is that a bad thing?" She turned to face him. "Not always. Sometimes you end up somewhere better." Ryan smiled, reaching for her hand. "I've been wanting to tell you something for weeks, but tonight felt like your night, and I didn't want to." Sarah leaned forward and kissed him, surprising them both. When she pulled back, Ryan's eyes were wide. "Sorry," she laughed softly. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks, too." "Don't apologize," he murmured, touching her cheek. "Just maybe do it again." Under the glow of gallery lights, surrounded by art born from transformation, they shared a second kiss. Not a first step back to something lost, but a step forward into something new. Later, as they left the institute, Sarah paused to look back at the building. The promotional banner hung above the entrance. Redefined. New perspectives in art and ability. "Ready to go?" Ryan asked, waiting patiently beside her. Sarah nodded, feeling a sense of completion. Not an ending, but a milestone passed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new art, new adventures. Her life would never be what she'd once planned. It would be entirely her own creation. "Yes," she said, taking one last look at the banner before turning away. "I'm ready." As they wheeled together into the cool San Francisco night, Sarah felt the city open before her. Not a maze of obstacles as she'd once seen it, but a landscape of possibilities. The road ahead would have its difficulties, its steep hills and unexpected turns, but she would face them on her own terms, with strength she'd never known she possessed. A strength that had been within her all along, waiting to be redefined.